Hello, and welcome to another episode of Thrive Stories. I am your host, Margi Delin, and today I am joined by my co-hosts, Gerardo Samano.
Hi, Margi.
Hi, Gerardo. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to be on my first episode of Thrive Stories.
Aww. And John Delin, over on sound, yes?
Hello, Margi. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you, John, over there?
It's been a while since I've seen you this morning.
That's right.
I'm playing Kara today because Kara's out of town. So.
Yeah, well, welcome, everyone. We are glad you're here.
Not out of town. She's on much needed vacation. So
this is true. Breaks are good.
Yeah.
So before we begin, just a short summary about what Thrive Stories project is. Basically, the idea are shortened interviews. So the interviews tend to be 1 to 2 hours long, as opposed to kind of the longer form of the traditional Mormon Stories podcast interview, where we have people nominate either themselves or someone they know in an area of thriving. And so some, let's just say potential areas might be parenting or mental health or grief and loss, or perhaps finding purpose, meaning and purpose. It could also be conscious, like a more intimate marriage. What else, John? What am I missing?
No, those are all good.
Yeah. So picking an area of thriving, nominating someone. And if you're interested in participating, we'll probably provide a link. Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole idea is just, we do a lot of deconstruction. We do a lot of truth claims. We do a lot of long form, but we want to help people heal and grow and kind of figure out how to build a big, beautiful life after religious orthodoxy or religion falls apart. So any domain you think would be useful to other people, we want you to throw in your story.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we begin today's interview, which I am so excited about, we're going to go ahead and hit it over to John one last time for announcements.
Yeah. And also I'll just say that in the bottom of every Thrive Story episode on the blog, or even in the show notes on YouTube, you can click on a link to apply, right?
That's right.
And then Margi approves.
And then I read them through with great love. And yes, we kind of move on from there. So feel free to submit.
Yeah. So just a couple of really quick announcements. We had our first Open Arms Collective event last week. Jen Camp leads those, and it's just this amazing group of women and gender non-binary individuals that are enjoying life together. And we're having one with Leah Young. Leah Young is going to be in town April 3rd, 1 to 3 p.m. I think that's a Sunday. It's going to be a communication and parenting class. We love Leah. You can go to mormonstories.org/events to register for that. And of course, Thrive Day for Women is coming up April 2nd, Thrive Day for Men, April 3rd. And then Thrive Houston, Southern California, and Florida are all April 2nd as well. And you can go to thrivebeyondreligion.com to register for those events.
Beautiful.
Back to you, Margi.
Great. Well, let's dive in finally. So I would like to welcome our interviewee. Is that who it is? The interviewee of the day. And I'm so excited to welcome Jake Bellenfant here.
How's it going?
Good to be here. Welcome. We are thrilled to hear from you today.
Glad to be here.
So why don't we start out just so that you all can get to know Jake just sort of on a basic level, having Jake just kind of introduce himself a little bit, kind of where you find yourself today, who you love, just a little bit about you in this moment.
Okay, a little bit about me. Well, I am a Orange County boy, born and raised. I'm the oldest of 4, and my parents are both converts to the church. My mom is British, so she was from a small fishing town in Grimsby Town, and she had served her mission in Anaheim, Spanish speaking, and had met my dad over here post mission. We growing up in Orange County was great. I had a great upbringing overall. We had, as far as like living in the area, we had Disneyland close to us. So we always were lucky to have like SoCal residents. We're huge Disney fans in my family. And, you know, post coming back from my mission, I moved here to Utah and had my adventure here, and then met my husband about 5 years ago. So, who I love today, I love my husband, Trevor. We have our long-haired German Shepherd, Bear.
Aw.
And my family, I love my dad, my stepmom, my sister, my 2 younger brothers, and my stepbrother. And yeah, and my friends and family that are here in Utah area. So.
Beautiful. And do you want to talk a little bit about the program that you're in right now, just because it is such a big part of your life right now?
Right. Yeah, my life's pretty hectic right now. So I graduated from the University of Utah's Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. So I am a licensed registered nurse. I've been working in mental health since 2012. So I've been both a psych tech and an RN. I've worked with a variety of populations, from adolescent residential to our like crisis services, step down hospital diversion, inpatient units with populations across the lifespan, and also the Utah State Prison. So I am currently at Vanderbilt University, and I am studying to be a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So continuing on my education, my end goal is to earn a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree. And I just want to be able to provide care and give back to the mental health community that I care so much about.
Brilliant. Yeah, that sounds like a very full life. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I was just in Nashville last week. So I'm sometimes going back and forth between Utah and Nashville, and my sleep hygiene is the best. I pick up shifts as a nurse still at night, and then I do clinical hours in the days and have to study. It's pretty wild right now.
Yeah, balancing act.
Yep.
Well, we're so glad you could squeeze us in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we start? What were some of the areas that you selected for areas of thriving for yourself?
Mental health for me, for sure. That is something I'm passionate about. It's something that I have personal experience with, and also a lot of work experience with. And also focusing on like grief and loss and finding a new sense of community and finding yourself as well.
Yeah. Beautiful. So if we were going to maybe begin in your formative years, like if we were going to kind of take a look at the messaging or any kind of standout stories with regard to themes that played into your mental health, I would assume maybe growing up gay played into that a little bit.
Right.
Or like, do you want to kind of take us through some of the messaging you received around being who you were and growing up kind of in your family, in your church community? What stands out?
It was really difficult growing up gay. I grew up around a really difficult time. We had Prop 8 come out around when I was in high school. So, it's kind of starting around that. I remember the day when we had that letter written or read out loud in sacrament meeting. I still can vividly remember that day. And it was just a really difficult time because I feel like there was just such high tensions between, the LDS community and the LGBTQ community. And sometimes it didn't always come out in the best ways from members and leaders and the youth around me growing up. So
I just realized Prop 8 was 14 years ago. That's a long time. So like you're a gay kid Mormon kid in California. For those who don't even know what Prop 8 was, talk about like how you remember experiencing that as a gay Mormon kid in California.
And how old were you?
I honestly, I just remember that I was in high school. 14 years. I'm 30 now. So,
wow.
So you're 16 math.
Yeah,
16. Okay. Yeah. And I just remember just feeling.
What was Prop 8 and how do you remember learning about it?
Well, I'm going to talk about how I understood Prop 8 from being young. It was just, a battle to fight against marriage equality in California. The church was very much pushing members to put up signs to go around asking for donations. And my parents did so as well. So that was really hard on me to see the community kind of gathering against another community. I just felt a lot of fear and terrified because, you're sat there and, the LGBT community is within the congregations. We're born into all these families. So it's, we are them. And it's hard when you hear, difficult things from coming out of some certain members' mouths and stuff.
Yeah. So. In your memory, was that kind of one of the first major times you felt messaging around kind of being gay, or growing up, had you felt that before? if
You
that
mean
makes
like
sense.
negative messaging around
Yeah,
it?
in church. Like, was that part of your story, or do you remember kind of the Prop 8 being the first real pivotal kind of whoa?
I think that was the first pivotal kind of whoa, but I had
Okay.
had some experiences before as well that I can remember from starting mostly around like junior high with even just at kids at school, they start using
Yeah.
bad names to, calling them other kids gay. And, that's when the gay jokes started. And, you kind of, you notice, I've always known that I was different. And I could say that I always knew that I was gay. So it's just constantly having that fight or flight response going and constantly living in fear. So I
Yes.
had that surround me a lot with both my schooling and with the youth and adults within my ward. So
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Jake. So
Mhm.
do you remember, was it during your teenage years when you came out to yourself? Because I feel like I don't know, for me growing up in the LDS church, like I did know I was different, but then I didn't know how to rationalize it or put it together with my beliefs. So like a lot of us would just, deny that we're gay. Some may just say, "Oh, I have same-sex attraction, but I'm not gay." And even some gay members of the church would even support things like Prop 8 and stuff during that time because of internalized homophobia and all the messaging that we get around what being gay is like the church paints this picture of gay people are evil and are bad, but I'm not bad, so I'm not gay, so and
Mhm.
those are the ones that the church is fighting. But so how did you think about all that stuff?
I really did believe that I was inherently bad. Hearing all these messages, I really struggled. Um, I thought that I was sometimes I would go into a sense of denial, like, oh, I'm not gay, but I always did know that I was gay. And it really took a toll on my mental health. I just remember that during my teenage years, just kind of talking about how I was as a teenager, I was a bit in religious orthodoxy, a bit of a shell of a human. I was very quiet, not humorous. I was very like irritable,
Mm.
easily annoyed, easily bored. Sometimes would speak out if I was upset, but at the same time, I was a good kid and had really good grades and was involved in soccer growing up, but I still had these things going on. And these are common symptoms that you see in adolescents that are struggling with depression. So,
That's
you
right.
know, but I just remember growing up having this sense of being bad and that I had to pray harder. I had to be more perfect. I pushed myself to get better grades. I wanted to make my parents proud. And I literally would cry myself to sleep every night, just praying, like, please don't make me gay. I don't want to be gay anymore.
Mm.
Um, and it was really hard on me. And then also with the suicidal ideation, which we'll get to.
Okay. So I'm hearing kind of this split sense of self. Is that right? It's like this, you have this self that's accomplishing and
Right.
achieving, right? In the external world, but then internally you're suffering. You actually are experiencing. Is that how you would describe that?
I would say that's correct. Yeah. I
Okay.
feel that I was really suffering at that time.
And would you
Or
say,
was-
like, how early do you remember kind of being conscious or aware that that was so? Like, do you remember as a boy being aware of, or when do you really feel like the weight of that emerging of sort of like, I have this self and this is like my striving kind of, or whatever, but at the heart too, I'm also just really, really feeling like there's a piece of me that I can't let people know about.
Probably around age 12 when you become a deacon. Yeah. Once you get, you have different standards set for you and you're getting into that adolescent life and,
Yeah.
you're beginning to pass the sacrament and have the spotlight on you a bit. I felt that more at that time. So than I
Yeah.
did in my early years. Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say, kind of, if you had to describe what religious orthodoxy, like, what that, let's just say how it was not serving you at that time, what would you say with regard to that, to you, when you look back? What would you say about that for those years?
I would say for those years, it was mostly not serving me well because I felt that I was in an unsafe environment. I felt like a lot of it was toxic. And I worried for my life, both with this kind of the messaging around being gay. It affected my mental health so greatly. And
Mm.
I just kind of always had that fight or flight response of feeling in danger and feeling fear and who can I trust? And
Wow.
that's how I remember my adolescent years, just being scared all the time. And
Yes.
that was hard. That's not a healthy way to live. So,
It's not. And our bodies and minds are not designed to live in constant fight or flight, right? So
right.
there's like a toll that takes on human beings when
Exactly.
they are in that state for long periods of time. Yeah.
There is, yeah. There's a study, the adverse childhood event study, and they go over different experiences that you could have during childhood and how how having cortisol and the sympathetic nervous system overactivated for such a long period of time, it increases your risks for a lot of physical and mental health issues later on in life. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing kind of this perpetual cortisol stream around safety, just always
right,
feeling like a threat, a
yeah,
potential threat could be around the corner.
right.
Okay. And then what about your relationships just at that time? Did you have this sense of could you be authentic? Could you be fully you with people in your life, or did you feel quite isolated?
Yeah, absolutely not. I felt pretty isolated. I felt like everything was very superficial. So all my
Yeah.
relationships were just on the surface, and a lot of that had to came down to trusting other people. Um,
Mhm.
that was a huge issue I went through. Was learning how to trust people, even growing up, and being authentic, and opening yourself up to others. So
Okay. Okay,
um,
that's a great kind of nesting, I feel like, for yeah, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So maybe for some heterosexual people watching this podcast might not fully understand like what that hiding or being in fear, how that translates in your day to day, like actions. To me, what comes to my mind is like um not doing something super feminine, so like no one would notice that I'm not gay, or not not really talking about my feelings with friend, even with like my closest friends, or how would that
Mm.
constant fear and trying to protect yourself translate into your actions? Do you remember any of that?
I would agree that I felt pretty similar. I definitely would purposefully try to act more masculine. I was involved in soccer, and I love to stay athletic and in shape. I was just I felt like I was really quiet, and um, it was really hard for me to just open up and have fun and smile. And that was really hard for
Mhm.
me because we had a lot of great activities going on around us that our leaders would put on. And I felt like I could not be a kid and enjoy and have fun because I was so stressed out and so scared all the time. So
That totally makes
Yeah.
sense because I feel like in order to get to that place where you can have fun, like just looking at it like evolutionarily, you have to feel safe.
right.
Like when we're being hyper vigilant, when we think harm is, imminent, we're not in a place of like experiencing joy and that's so interesting because in talking with you, it feels like now that's part of you. Like that is part of you is that sort of joy and humor. And would you say that's true?
Oh,
That's
I would for sure. I could be, I'm nervous now, but I could be a bit of a goof in my personal life. So um
yeah.
and yeah, I'm a bit silly, I'm a bit awkward, and I embrace embrace that part of myself. So
Yeah. So that's
um
high effort, Gerardo. I would feel like that's such a good point of just
Yeah.
like what's being asked of someone.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah. So, in thinking about all of this and looking at mental health, and you can bring in kind of grief and loss naturally, but in looking at this, what would we see if we were going to drop in kind of you before either that awakening or transition? happened, what would we see in you? You've kind of gone over it a little bit, but if we kind of dropped right before the impetus for change, what would we see in you? What was your coping like? How are you showing up in the world? Was it much more about this? I feel like you can kind of maybe take us even through mission almost.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I still want to cover some things from my adolescent,
Oh, do.
childhood. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
would love that.
Before we get into from a mission. So some stories. Yeah. Growing up, I had, I'll just bring up them randomly. I remember my sister, indirect bullying of her. I remember she was at girls camp, and she's a beautiful woman. But she struggled growing up with feeling self-conscious about her acne. So she always wanted to wear makeup. And so, she was wearing makeup at girls camp, and a couple of the girls were making fun of her, saying, "Who are you trying to impress with the makeup?" And then they started to sing, "I Kissed a Girl" by Katy Perry. And that really affected her. And I could see that. And it indirectly affected me because it created more fear, of bullying for
Mhm.
being gay. And then just also wanted to discuss like a specific topic of where my distrust in all leaders and my youth around me kind of happened. And this is a pretty like serious story for me, so it's
Okay.
hard to go
Okay.
over. Growing up, we had a great high adventure trip to Yosemite, and we were climbing Half Dome. And on that, it was like a 40-mile hike, I believe. And on that hike, there was a boy that me and him played soccer together, and we didn't always get along. And we were not getting along on that trip, and the leaders did not sense that. And we were not around any of the other leaders. And we had gotten into a physical altercation. And right after that physical altercation, we had the young men's president at that time around the hill taking pictures as we were like walking down. And I had just had my fight or flight response mode going, and I had was super upset, and I had flipped off the camera.
Mhm.
So, and immediately after doing that, I got a lot of belittling, shaming, said, "How could you, I'm going to have to tell your parents." And I was terrified at that moment.
Yeah.
So, and then I ended up getting grounded when I got home. So I just remember that the messaging, there was no like, "Jake, this isn't like you. What's going on? Can we talk about this?" It just was straight into, kind of feeling shame and feeling guilt about what I'd just done.
Yeah.
So we get back, and we had a huge spaghetti dinner, and for the ward, kind of to show our trip that we had. And on the PowerPoint slides for that trip, he had put the picture of me flipping off the camera in front of the entire ward. All the children, the elderly, all the families were there.
Oh.
And it had shown on the screen. And immediately this was a huge moment for me, because I was struggling so hard with feeling suicidal at that time. And that was one of the days that I really wanted to go and end my life.
Mm.
All trust had been pretty much destroyed by any leaders at that point in time, and feeling like I am not in a safe environment here.
Yeah.
And that's really hard for a kid to go through. A lot of embarrassment and that public shaming.
Public shaming. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm
So that was like a huge
sorry.
huge story as to like also why I struggled with so many trust issues, I think, with growing up with leaders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So would you say, how old would you say? Were you around 14, 16?
I was around 15.
Around
at that
15
time.
for
I
that.
remember that. Yep.
And the first part of that story was kind of so you witnessing your sister, right, go through some bullying,
Right.
right, around basically makeup,
Yeah.
something normative.
Yep.
Okay. But
Yeah,
being
and just
kind of
some-
called out
They
Yep.
were alluding that she might be lesbian, because why would she be wearing makeup on
At
a girls' camp?
girls' camp.
Yeah.
Right. And then singing the
Interesting.
Katy Perry song. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you had that, and then you have followed up then your own experience.
Right. And the boys around me, would go out of their way to, make jokes about being gay, go into a little more effeminate voices because they thought it was funny. I had heard even leaders go into more effeminate voices
Yeah.
as well. Just around that Prop 8 time, there was a lot of like just kind of demonizing of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
And how, you know, they're all, like, I've heard they're all addicts. They all, you know, the marriages are a sham. It's they're battling. It's a war on the family. And I had so many messages, you know.
Yes. I am just
it's,
feeling it. I am feeling it for like a developing human. A
yeah, it's
human
hard to
that
talk
is
about
just
now, even now.
yeah, I can imagine.
So, and I remember even one, this was when I was 17. I remember one leader had even shown me a funny meme that was actually pornographic in nature. And I remember it, and it said, you know, it said, like hitting the bottle again. And it was of a man who was self-stimulating with the glass bottle up his butt. So that was really hard for me to see, you know, and just, I had so many messages, and to be shown that as a minor as well was rough.
Oh my
So
gosh.
had,
Wow.
yeah.
You really did.
Yep.
That is so hard to hear. Let me ask you, just going back to this thing where your photo on the showing the
right.
Did no adult find that problematic at all?
Oh, this is a hard topic. So, you know, I personally, the adult who did that, the person had personally apologized. I personally think that this specific leader is a little bit narcissistic, and I don't fully believe the apology. My parents, although very upset, I think they weren't as worried about this. This is what's wrong about it, is that I feel like my safety and my mental health didn't matter. It was about peace for the community and keeping everyone okay, but not really focused on me. There was no real follow-up advocacy for how I was doing.
Right.
And I remember from them, just, you know, we talked a little bit about like how I would spend my time, you know, before bed, just crying and feeling these intrusive thoughts constantly about wanting to end my life. And I would go on long runs with my iPod Shuffle. I remember pretty much every single night. And I would literally get to the end of the street and just want to walk in front of a car or truck pretty much every night. It was bad. If I didn't have soccer practice and I was running by myself, it was pretty bad. And, you know, this goes into what I want to talk about with, you know, parents and adults, is really doing wellness checks on your youth.
Yeah.
You know, you can seem like you have it all together, or a kid could put on a happy fake smile, and, you know, they could appear to be doing well in their sports or schooling, but you just never know. You never know who's really struggling. And so I think it's important and I think that people are getting better at that, and we are educating our leaders and parents on mental illness. But I think it's important.
Important. It's so important to advocate and take care. And part of that too, do you feel, is also being the type of parent that a child would tell.
Right.
If they weren't doing well, right? Having the type of relationship and trying to sort of prioritize being the type of parent your child would want to talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, struggling with this ward, it had already kind of like, my trust had been completely lost by this ward. The father of this specific leader was also the stake president at the time, and he was much more difficult than I thought this other leader was. You know, funny story. He had like, I remember at a young men's camp, the boys like to play playing cards with like spoons or Egyptian hand slap. And I remember one night, this was by the fire, he had been visiting, the stake president visiting, and he threw the playing cards in the fire and started yelling at all the young men how, you know, talking about how bad gambling was. And they had seen so many families get destroyed by gambling. And it was just like, it's pretty terrifying, but pretty funny looking back at it now. But yeah, this was the kind of the leaders that I had in my ward. So becoming 18, I felt what was best for me was to move to the sister stake in the singles ward after graduating, because of a complete loss of sense of trust for these adults. And you know, kind of feeling like an adult that I could be safe with was hard. And kind of going into a little bit of my story, I actually was my My family is really close with the McCurdy family. So people who don't know who that is, Jeanette McCurdy, she plays Sam on iCarly. So they were also in our ward, and really close with them growing up with their brothers and with her. She also podcasts as well. So she talks a lot about, eating disorders, her time in Hollywood, Mormonism, finance. So definitely check her podcast channel out.
We'll add that to the show notes.
Okay. And but her mom was someone that, because I knew that they had that experience in Hollywood, I knew that they were a little bit more progressive in their views. So she was one of the first adults that I felt comfortable with talking about my mental health issues and talking about coming out as being gay.
Wow.
So that's how that kind of plays into my story, is just I
Okay.
felt more safe with her than I did with the leaders that I was constantly surrounded around.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so was she in your home ward, or was she in the ward that you went to when you were 18?
No, she was a home ward. Yeah.
So she was in the home
so
ward,
we've
that
been,
ward
we've been
where-
really close with them all growing up since I was like 5 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. Really close family friends with them
Okay, got it.
all growing up.
Yeah. Well,
What was her name again?
Jeanette McCurdy, she played Sam on Nickelodeon's iCarly.
What's the podcast called? Do you know?
She just has a channel. Just look up for Jeanette McCurdy on YouTube. She has her own channel.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
So that sounds like it could be a good Mormon. I don't know if they're faithful, but that sounds like it could be a good Mormon Stories podcast episode.
She talks a little bit about Mormonism on her
I don't
podcast
think
as
she
well.
believes anymore.
No.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, let me just say, like, it makes sense why you didn't feel safe. And that is, it's one thing, to have messages around not being safe. It's another thing to have messaging that makes you feel unsafe, and then experiences, your direct experience after experience of feeling
Right.
unsafe in this
Right.
place that you exist as a child. There's not a lot you can do about that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, going into this, kind of carrying on my story, going into the sisters ward, it was actually a much better fit for me. The stake president actually has a transgender son, and the bishop was really, really kind. He was easy to talk to. So this was it was a healthy, better fit for me at that time.
Wow.
Pre-mission.
Pre-mission, got it.
Right. And so before, going on my mission, I came out to the bishop. He was the first one that I kind of trusted, ecclesiastical leader wise, to talk to about this in a formal interview before going on my mission. And, in order to get approved, I had to go through LDS Family Services. So,
Wait, so while you're going through your interviews to receive a calling, to apply for your mission,
right.
They ask
talk
you
about
that
my
you need
mission.
to go to LDS.
They did.
Family
Yes.
Services?
Yes. Because I had admitted that I was gay. So that was something that they said I was going to go to LDS Family Services and receive therapy to
Oh.
get clearance for me to be able to go on a mission.
I've never heard of that. Have you, John?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Yeah. This was back in 2010. So quite a while ago. So I don't know
Okay.
if things have changed since then.
Yeah. Okay.
So surrounding that, we'll talk a little bit about therapy and the program that they had put me in that's separate from that. So as far as the therapy goes, there was no sense of I was naive, 18, had no idea what therapy should look like. And, it's funny, the kid that you had on last week, he talked about how his therapist had always started with a prayer, and mine had also always began therapy with a prayer. And I remember on one instance, also a scripture reading.
Oh my God.
And looking back at that now, I'm like, oh, that's not,
Yes, not a good sign.
No. And in these therapy sessions, there was no real mental health assessment. There was no PHQ-9. There was no GAD-7, no Columbia
Yes.
Suicide Severity Scale Rating, nothing talking about depression or anxiety. It all revolved around me being gay and be able to control my thoughts and control my actions. And that's all it focused on. And to make sure that I would be safe going on a mission, being around other men, having a companion. And so I could talk about some of the, this is a, content warning before I go on for a minute. Some of the questions that I was asked prior to going on a mission was, that I remember was, have you ever penetrated another man? Have you ever been penetrated by another man? Have you ever performed oral sex? Have you ever received oral sex? And then they would do, this is the scales I got, was like on a scale of 1 to 10. Today, how attracted are you to men? How much do you want to perform these acts? In addition with those questions. So they were really trying to,
Wow.
and they also would throw in like scenarios like if a friend did this, or if a companion had, touched your hand, would you go in for a kiss or something like that? Like just really kind of embarrassing stuff for me to talk about.
Boundary
Yeah,
problem
some boundaries.
questions.
And so looking back on it, I'm like, this was not evidence-based. This was not therapy.
Yes.
It was pretty damaging to me. And this was my first ever experience with a licensed professional.
Wow.
So I had a little bit of a skewed view of what mental health treatment looks like.
I had a question, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if the reason why maybe they referred you to LDS Family Services was because had you confessed to have done anything with a guy before, or was it just like you confessed to your attractions and that was it?
No, at that point, just confessed to about my attractions. Yeah.
Okay.
And also struggles with, porn and masturbation, which is common among young men.
Okay.
So up until that point, you would not. Is there anything you would want
no,
to share?
At that point,
about?
no. At that point, I had not had any sexual relations with other men.
Because I'm just like, what's it like? You're just this gay Mormon
Seriously.
kid trying to be righteous, trying to go on a mission.
Right.
They're asking you all these really, as if they're assuming,
explicit questions.
asking you all these super explicit questions. What was that like?
This was by LDS. The questions was by LDS Family Services, right? Or was them
right? Yeah, it was with the therapist with LDS Family Services.
Did they remember if they make you sign something that the therapist was able to communicate with the ecclesiastical leaders? Or
they were, they were, because I was trying to get clearance for my mission, so they were allowed to communicate with my ecclesiastical leaders. I do remember that. Sorry. So, what was your question again? About, I think John had asked me.
What was it like to have such graphic questions asked to a young, naive Mormon boy just trying to go on a mission?
Humiliating, pretty embarrassing. Just kind of in shock. I'd never been asked those kind of questions by anyone.
Yeah.
So that was really damaging to my mental health.
And also probably trust still. Like
Right.
you went
Again,
in with already being right.
Right. Trust, kind of feeling like, okay, I'm going to get a sense of coping skills and therapy. I don't know what that looks like, but let's go for it. And that's not what I was getting at the time. It was just, I felt like it was a kind of a sense of conversion therapy for me.
Yeah.
To just maintain.
Yeah.
And so the other program that they had me in was like one that the church was trying out. It was a type of mentorship program. So I don't know if Evergreen had done this. I had binders on it and I do not own them anymore. So I really wish that I remember the name of this program. But they had set me up with a guy in the singles ward. He was 29 and I was 18 at the time, who had done this before with other young men. And it was to kind of like build male relationships in a healthy way. So I had 3 mentors, and 2 of them I would say are great friends of mine. Absolutely love them. Great, outstanding guys. And this other man, I just kind of still have some questions for in the present. Looking back on it, we would hang out, and then he would want to take me up to his room and in the living room and cuddle. And I thought that was, as a young, naive male, I was like, okay, I'll have physical affection, I'll cuddle, but looking back on that now, I kind of see the power dynamics and how inappropriate that was at the time.
What was this for?
This was also a program that was with the singles ward that I had been with in collaboration with a therapist that had been.
What was the program called?
I honestly cannot remember. I know it was like a mentorship program though, where you were supposed to, kind of hang out with other men one-on-one and gain trust and gain healthy relationships with other men. So
it was for people who had same-sex attraction, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And wow,
sounds like North Star.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It sounds similar to something that like Evergreen North Star would be.
Well, these are the years when Evergreen is thriving, and conversion therapy is at its peak in Mormonism, and really the church is embracing these ideas of homosexuality is caused by a distant relationship with the father and maybe not really good connections with males while growing up, and maybe too close relationship with girls, and that's what made you gay. So now you have to repair your male relationships, and and I imagine that's what this program that you were attending was about, right? Like,
Correct. I agree. Yeah,
wow.
So this just feels so aggressive.
it does. Yeah.
And
I
this
mean-
was
a
in
lot for me to
at
go
the
through
church
through my adolescence and young adulthood
Exactly.
life.
you
on
would
top
meet at a
of-
church.
Sorry.
You would meet at a church, or where would
No,
you meet?
we would go out in the community and do activities. Yeah.
But like, was it a church sponsored program, or was it like nothing? It had nothing to do with the church, kind of like.
No, it did, because it was set up by, I remember it set up by my bishop, and
Oh,
yeah.
that's
So
how I got
in
introduced to it.
conjunction with
Otherwise, I would,
therapy,
yeah, in
you had
conjunction
this
with
mentor
therapy. Yeah,
program.
yes, yeah, because I would have had no idea to look for something like Evergreen or North Star. So.
Exactly.
I didn't know this was going on, because this is a big deal, because the church has always tried to distance itself from conversion therapy. That was evergreen. Even though we've been able to prove that the church gave funds to them, they still try to say, well, that was them, not us. But the fact that bishops are like creating this program and allowing it to be in words and stuff, that's the church promoting conversion therapy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're gay? Okay, we've got this thing you go to
Right.
where you cuddle with men so that we can fix
Yeah.
you so that you won't be
Yeah.
gay and you can marry a woman. And
Yeah.
is that right?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Oh,
And it felt also really weird for me, because this guy at the time had a girlfriend who he had become married to. So it also felt like really
Mm.
awkward to me. I'm like, okay, you're already in a relationship.
Yeah.
Why are you becoming any
What's
sort of
going on?
physical way with me?
so
Yeah.
your bishop's referring you to a married man to cuddle with as a
No,
way
he was in my singles ward. He was not married yet. He had a girlfriend at the time, but he did marry this particular girlfriend. So I still felt guilty,
Yeah.
in a sense of like awkward, like, okay, but you're in a relationship. This is really weird.
Just to be clear, there's no evidence in the world that cuddling with another man makes you less gay,
Right.
right?
Definitely not evidence-based,
No.
research-based.
No.
Yes. Okay.
So I guess that brings me going on to kind of back to where you were at, was around the mission time.
That's right.
I had gone to Jamaica. So
And was your
Jamaican.
suffering, can I just drop in
Right.
with sort of your suffering point
Yeah.
around this time? So, clearly you end up going on a mission,
right.
but like, what are you feeling as you're like prior to going on a mission, that process? Like, what's your suffering level, and how that internal self, how are you coping?
I don't know how I got through that time, honestly. I don't know how I'm still alive today. I feel really lucky to be here today. I felt like I had, being the oldest of four and wanting to please my parents and my leaders. We had a lot of young men growing up at my time that were also going on missions. So I felt like I did not want to be the black sheep. I
Mhm.
felt a lot of social pressures
That's right.
to carry on. We all got our Eagle Scouts. We were that kind of award. So I felt like I needed to continue being the perfect son and go on. And that's just kind of what I had my mind set on, was like, oh, I need to be perfect. This is a part of being perfect. This is the next step of going on. And maybe if I'm more righteous, I'll be able to one day not be gay. It was all focused on not being gay. That was in my mind all the time.
That
Was like,
was the
please don't make me
healing.
gay anymore. Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Okay. All right. And so then you end up being called on a mission. You go to Jamaica.
Right.
Okay.
Jamaica, it was a bit of a love-hate relationship with Jamaica. I loved, the humanitarian aid experience we did, building, chicken coops and gardens for members there. I absolutely loved that, doing English and reading lessons for them who couldn't read and write. But, teaching people that are really in poverty about
Mhm.
tithing,
Right.
I really felt guilty about.
Mhm.
It didn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a bit of an experience, and I was struggling with my mental health on the mission, and really at that time, like feeling like, do I actually believe this or not? And I was a really super straight A student. I had read all the books, everything that I needed to. I was constantly praying, And that was really a pivotal moment as to like, do I really believe what I'm preaching at this time?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to maybe go back just a little bit, but I thought this was an important thing to address because there is a comment by someone named Justin Hyatt Novak, and I just went and looked up his Facebook, and it looks like he's currently serving as a missionary.
Oh, okay.
That's what his profile on Facebook says. But he says regarding your question, regarding the questions that you were asked to get clearance to serve a mission, he says, well, those are just common sense, because he says you can't be gay and serve. He says, so the questions are embarrassing stuff. The church was making sure you weren't going to molest or rape a companion.
Oh.
So this guy, meaning you, chose to get offended by questions that he got asked. If you choose to get offended by what someone says or asks, you in the church, and you leave because of that, that's pretty childish. So I was not going to
He's
highlight
making
it,
a lot of assumptions in
but,
that of why
but he's
I
a
left the church
missionary.
and see a lot of stigma around
Yeah, and we
being
had
gay and what that means.
I
and
was
what
going
that
to say,
looks like.
or that those
A lot of,
questions have
a
anything
lot of
to do with
biases.
rape or.
Right.
right.
Sorry. Mhm.
And so we had Colby Sorensen here, who was a missionary just recently, and he was telling us about how at least in the 2 missions where he served, the culture and the way missionaries today talk about LGBT issues is pretty disgusting. So that's why I thought maybe it would be a good opportunity to whoever is listening out there and maybe has these ideas, including LDS missionaries, to maybe just respond to why would these questions be out of line,
Yeah, because there's another way to ask it is what's it like to be a gay young Mormon man on a mission living with other men for the first time? And implicit in those questions are, well, of course you're going to rape and abuse your companions, but that's why wouldn't all heterosexual men rape people? Like it's so I mean, maybe let's just instead of getting, I mean, I'm heated up by the offensiveness of those questions. Maybe just talk about what that's like for you and what that was like for you, and then why those questions don't really make sense from your point of view.
The questions were confusing to me because I was really young and naive and had not engaged in any of those behaviors. I was a really good boy. And so to hear these kind of explicit questions right off the bat was really demeaning and humiliating. And it was like, I felt pretty innocent at that time. I was like, what's going on? I'm kind of confused. And I remember kind of going back, I'm kind of on your comments, John. I remember there was a story told about like, it's okay to punch your companion in the face if they are gay or try to make a move on you. Isn't that a story that's one of the
back here?
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. So I guess I had some messaging. I guess that's a hard one to respond.
And as a Jew that are very informed and very involved with mental health and how mental health professionals should navigate therapy, and that what's wrong with a therapist, crossing boundaries and asking those type of questions and making a lot of assumptions that maybe are not in line with what psychological associations would teach about
Ethics.
LGBT people and ethics.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, especially since I had never even had a good psychiatric evaluation done to cover even just the basics of like my depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, that I felt like that's inappropriate to even go there because that's a pretty honed in, specialized area for people to focus on it, is sexuality, sex therapy. Yeah,
that's right.
But I mean, I think implicit in the question is like, oh, you've got male companions, so you like want to make out with everyone, and
right? And that's
and
not
have no control. You would have no control, and there's this sense of like, I guess if you feel attracted to that you would also not be a respectful human being.
Right.
Like you would want to abuse someone because I just don't think we have those assumptions about heterosexual relationships around attraction and how attraction works. Are we animals? Are we just like, if we feel attracted to someone, we're going to go pummel them so that we,
So what was that like? Having roommates that were
that wasn't even an issue.
Yeah. So what was
It was,
Exactly.
no, yeah, I felt pretty controlled, and you're not even attracted to everyone. I'm pretty particular.
Exactly. Turns out.
So no, not pretty much a non-issue there for me anyway.
Right.
So.
And that's something that John have asked me, I think on my interview too.
Only to dispel myths.
Right.
Yeah.
And I it's the same as Jake. I had never had an issue where I was super attracted to a companion or fell in love with a companion or anything close to that.
Yeah, none of that for me either. So
I think that's what's assumed.
Right.
Is that you just want to make out with everything you see.
Right.
Or something. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this just goes on to this messaging that you get in this high demand group of what it's like to be gay growing up, and there's harmful messaging everywhere. So
Yeah. Wow. There are so many assumptions there that I really want to go into, but I'm not going to.
right.
Just around how attraction works for human beings, just a human
Mhm.
being thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So
let's talk about me coming back home from my mission.
let's do that. And that's kind of where the catalyst, right? For change, if we were going to kind of,
Yes.
this is where it kind of hits for you, where something in your mental health, it hits, and then you so tell us about that.
I had come home from my mission, and that was the point in time that I had came out to my parents. And I absolutely love my parents. They've been very supportive of me and my marriage. But I remember even my mom at the time, her initial reaction was tearful. She was worried about her friends and how this would be portrayed. She was a little bit embarrassed. And I always had this sense, even growing up, of being compared to the other sons. And that was really hard on me growing up. So I think at that point, I still felt unsafe in SoCal. And I had moved out with one of my best mission friends here in Utah. So that's how I kind of ended up in Utah, studying at UofU is where I began kind of my Utah journey.
Yeah.
And that was kind of once I was out in the college environment, my, moment for change is noticing, like, what did I just go through?
Giving you a minute.
Right.
Giving you
me a
some
minute
space.
to think and some space. Yep.
Got it.
And that's the point in time where I actually sought help myself. I had used the school services, and that was my first ever, real great interaction with a therapist. Was through UofU. Yeah.
Okay. So at UofU, you were
Yes.
able to actually, it sounds like, have an experience with a therapist who was like a fully licensed, ethical.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We got straight into and covering my anxiety, depression. I got CBT therapy, which was really great for me. Learning coping skills, how to live healthy. And for, in my intrusive thoughts at the time, after having a minute to breathe and get away from that all, those had kind of gone away. It was interesting after being, stuck in this environment for so long,
highly controlled.
Yeah. In that highly controlled environment, that once I had been escaped from that, it was not struggling with those intrusive thoughts as much. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Okay. So you come home from your mission and you described kind of this, would you say, did you have a feeling of like letting down your mom? Did you feel like you had let down your mom in that way? Or was it more feeling peers, like that social pressure component, that conformity that's so pervasive of that external kind of within Mormonism?
All of it.
All of it. It was all put together.
Right.
And would you say when you went ahead, I'm just going to notice, by the way, you've made some key choices in advocacy for yourself in moving away from your home ward, first of all, and shifting to that other ward where you can when you were 18. And now again, coming off your mission, having this sense of getting out of that environment and away. Like those two things were it feels like like almost life preservers at that time, just to keep you above water for another minute.
Exactly. Yeah, I do feel that way.
Yeah.
And they were the right choices at the time.
Yeah. Okay. So would you say your suffering had reached before this catalyst for change, where you went to UVU, you went with this friend, right? And you went ahead and started meeting with the therapist. Was your suffering, was it pretty bad?
Yeah, there was a lot
Was
of
it
intense therapy sessions and really talking about everything that we've just gone through
Mm,
and how I'm going to move forward. And so that was really my kind of moment in my mental health,
Yeah.
journey for actually beginning to take care of myself.
yeah.
What were the
Um,
dilemmas you were exploring? Because usually when people feel suicidal, they feel stuck.
Yeah.
That they, and I also just know that with the Family Acceptance Project research, that if a youth feels rejected or highly rejected or even not fully embraced by their family members, that suicidality and depression and even unhealthy self-medication can really skyrocket. So not getting the family support that maybe you wanted or needed, I wonder how that was for you.
Yeah.
So what were the main issues were making you feel stuck?
for feeling stuck in the sense of in my family, or
Just your anxiety and depression.
oh, I think, yeah, having to please my parents, having to live, up to expectations,
Yep.
and to carry on with what was expected of me, I think was where a lot of that stemmed from. So I think had I had not had that orthodoxy environment, I don't know if I would have those struggles of anxiety, depression, SI as bad as I did.
Yeah.
I think it definitely was a huge factor into me struggling with mental health. So.
Were you worried about marriage and what your life was going to look like after your mission, and eternal families? And on our mission, you're constantly, that's one of the main messages you're teaching people. And how is that going to work on your life when you are gay? And I've never thought about it that way. Just right now that John said, LGBT people can feel stuck in the church because there's no progression. Like, you can't achieve the highest level of the celestial kingdom. You can't have high up callings because you can't be a bishop. You can't be a stake president. You can't have a lot of callings if you are not married. So you're stuck in like no progression kind of thing. So was that any of that on your mind?
There was, yeah. I just, facing a lot of stigma and messaging around being gay is that, you can't truly be happy. If you do get married, it's not a real marriage. What is life going to look like? Are you going to become a drug addict or an alcoholic? If you do this, are you going to get sick and get HIV right away? There was just so much messaging around what is going to happen for my life. And, yeah, the sense, but I kind of felt at that time that I knew the route that I wanted to head. And something that my parents always did say is that they actually would prefer, if I were to leave, that I would one day get married to a man. They did actually prefer that. So
Interesting.
yeah.
I think that's rare, actually.
It is. And so personal info, my uncle is actually gay, and he has unfortunately not been able to have good outcomes after coming out as gay. So I think that they saw what he was going through and they didn't want that for me. So I think that could have affected it as well. So.
Yeah.
I just have to say that, like, in Mormonism, you often, because Mormons tend to hang around active believing Mormons, a gay Mormon youth wouldn't have a lot of healthy role models for like gay Mormon who left the church and found a long-term committed partner and had a great job and became a respected member of the community. It's more like cousin who went off to San Francisco and you never heard from him again, or family, uncle that lives across the country and has no connection with his family members, and maybe a lot of negative cautionary tales. But where would you ever pick up it as a 20-something gay Mormon youth, like role models that could be like, oh no, you got this. You can have a great education, great career, great love, great companionship,
positive outcome,
super positive. Where would you even have an idea that were possible, let alone a role model.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I hope to change. That's why we're here. Gerardo and I
Woohoo!
both
That's right.
both
Yeah.
married and both living good lives, living healthy, becoming successful and thriving.
But at the time,
But at the time, there was none of that for me. Right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right. And something that I was noticing when you were talking about first going into therapy at UVU, just around your themes, right? Around your parents and, kind of that perfectionism, that outward achieving kind of self is just, the level at which, how you were talking about the hollowness, that you had this hollowness.
Mhm.
It's like you're showing up for everyone else, like
Right.
you're showing up to get love and to make everyone happy. But in the end, on the inside, it's like you're taking the hit for all of it.
Very
And
much so.
right, that's what
felt
I'm
that way.
feeling from
Yeah.
you as you're going into therapy is just like a shell of a human that has really tried to love and get love in the way you were taught and shown, and feeling just absolutely like in that cycle of self-betrayal to have to be there, which that's why it feels like that space was so important. Would you agree? Moving and having that space and time to look at your life so far?
It is. Yeah. You are kept so busy and this
Yeah.
under a bit of like time control. We at an early morning seminary and soccer and, honors classes
True.
and, then scouts and youth programs and firesides. You are on the go all the time that you never,
Right.
I felt like I never really had time to just like get away from it all, sit
And
down
be
and
with
think.
yourself.
Yeah. Be with myself. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So you're having this experience now with a therapist.
Right.
And what's that like for you now this time around?
Very different. It was great. I felt heard. I felt like she was able to focus on the right things and was able to teach me coping skills that I needed. I was able to talk about all these things we've just talked about with her and work on my interpersonal relationships with my family members, be able to set boundaries. And from there, I felt like my mental health really skyrocketed from there. I got really active into weightlifting and took care of my physical health that way. So there was just, I got a lot of good skills from her, a lot of mindfulness techniques as well. So,
Ooh, I'm going to
Yeah.
ask more about this because I almost feel like we're kind of now in the rebuilding phase.
right.
John, what did you want to say?
So really quickly, this is at UVU, correct?
Right. Correct.
So one of the big problems people have is something you alluded to in Utah, which is, you go to a therapist, but it's the one that your bishop recommends, and it's someone who's tied to like LDS Family Services. They start, like you mentioned before, they start therapy with prayer, and their whole goal is to keep you from being who you are and to try and push you into an Orthodox Mormon mindset. And I think a key decision you made is to go with a licensed ethical therapist who is culturally competent in LGBT healing and growth, and who wasn't going to tell you to pray and fast and have faith in Jesus and start your therapy sessions with the prayer and become more righteous, and then you can just marry a woman. You're choosing a secular, whatever their personal religious beliefs are, a secular therapist whose allegiance is to their code of ethics.
That's right.
And to professionalism. And there's a lot of Mormons in Utah or Idaho or other places that don't find therapy, and that's bad. And then there's a whole block that do find therapy, but they find an incompetent, unethical therapist. And I just have to highlight that what you chose, you were able to find probably through the UVU Counseling Center, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Is and usually even at BYU Provo, I don't know about BYU Idaho, even at BYU Provo, the therapists there respect their codes of ethics, and they provide empirical-based, evidence-based ethical treatment. And so I'm just happy you finally got that, because that's what you need, and that's what so many people need.
Exactly. Yeah. And this therapist was amazing. I'm not supposed to know what upbringing this person has or what biases, but there was none of that sort of pressure of feeling like this, this has to go in conjecture with the
That's
religion.
right.
and it felt safe, which is what I needed: ethical, safe, and evidence-based. So
Was that one of the first places that you experienced safety? Just thinking about your upbringing and how much of the
I would
time
say
you felt
so. Yeah.
unsafe.
Yes.
Wow.
I felt pretty safe with her, and that was that's a huge thing for our LGBTQ youth, is a sense of feeling like you can be in a safe space, and you can trust those adults and stuff around you. So I hope that people who are active in the church hearing this, advocate to make changes in your local wards, and be that adult that a kid would approach and feel comfortable talking about their mental health with you, or
Or advocate
or right,
openly.
right, for the youth. So
Yeah.
they, younger generations, millennials raising up these kids, and right now they have a lot of, I feel like they can make a huge change to how previous
Mhm.
generations have done things, and
That's
they could
right.
create safe spaces
That's
for
right.
their
Like
youth.
one person,
Yeah,
just the power of one person in an environment
right.
that can be safe. Yeah. Okay. Can I just pause for a minute before we're about to kind of head into, I feel like, the rebuilding, but can I ask you a quick question around grief and loss at this
Yes.
time? Okay. So in thinking about that minute that you take a pause, right? And now you're at UVU and you're starting to kind of feel support and safety. Did you have moments of feeling grief and loss around the boy growing up, and what you had wished you had felt or been able to, or relationships, or did you have any backward grief, or did you have feelings of grief and loss come up? And if so, what was it around and how did you grieve that loss?
I did. It was really difficult. You feel like when you leave, you lose a sense of your community. Your relationships are not as authentic as they were when you were active in the church. You always feel a sense of like them trying to get you back in, bring you back into the fold per se. And but some of them have been authentic as well. But I feel like my being, I had lost that person. I had to say goodbye to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a sense of grief. Yes, as
Okay.
well.
So almost a grief around like a self
Yep.
that you had to be for a time. Is
Right.
that right? And then giving birth to sort of a new.
Being reborn. Yep. And taking on adult life and becoming who I want to be. Set my own values, set my own ethics, and
Yeah.
my own morality on how I
Yeah.
want to be as an adult growing up.
So what did grief and loss look like at that time? How did it appear to you?
That's a hard question. I think that
I think culturally, oftentimes too, it's not something that's really openly acknowledged. We are more apt to see like the grief that comes from a death of a person versus a death of a piece of ourselves or a part of our identity, or even loss that we experience from a childhood we wish we had had, or a love, from parents during a pivotal time that we wish we had. They're actually called something. I can't remember if it's intangible griefs or it's something like that, which are hard because they're not acknowledged culturally, but still they're griefs that are equally, deep and true.
there are.
So
Yeah. So looking.
just at the grief and loss, do you remember what it felt like? Did you feel heavy? Did you cry? Was processing with the therapist huge
Yes,
as a way to
I think
process that?
a lot of it was processing, and yeah, I did. It was really sad. It was really sad to say that this, I'm going to leave this person behind, and I'm leaving this community behind, and I need to, start fresh and start anew. So
To save yourself.
right, to make sure that I would be okay and be mentally safe. So, and a bit about grief and loss, carrying on a bit in my story, is that my mom actually did pass away. So, very similar to the submarine officer that you guys had on. I remember his mom had got pancreatic cancer, and that's what my mom had. This was right before I started my nursing program at the University of Utah. So I had to, we had a short time with her by the time she got diagnosed to the time she passed
Oh.
away. And, she got to meet my husband a month before she passed,
Mm.
and was really kind and loving and supportive of us and to him. And that was really hard to see her go, and a sense of grief, you know, with losing her, and also given this like map of reality and worldview that you're given growing up. And if those beliefs differ, I'm looking at what does that look like when grieving my mom?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is she? I don't necessarily, we don't know if there's an afterlife or not. I'm more in the agnostic theist
Mm-hmm.
belief system where I'm okay with having her spirit and the energy she had in this life touch me
Mm-hmm.
and move forward. But it could be difficult because you have a sense of what's going to happen, and if you don't agree with those things or don't believe in them, it's a I guess I revisited that sense of grief when she passed away.
Yes.
I'm just interested in hearing more about how were you able to, I mean, you come back from a mission, you go to UVU, you start taking therapy. How did you get to the point of being more like an agnostic side? Did you go through a faith crisis?
I did, yes.
A lot of I mean, for me, it was a process where like I was living authentically while still believing in the church. So I was dating, I got engaged, and me and my current husband, we still believed in the church. But did you have was it different for you? Did you have to kind of make peace with the church's teachings and kind of leave that aside, and then you started living authentically after that, or how did it work out for you?
I did. They went hand in hand. We're not going to go into a lot of like the faith crises deconstruction stuff in this episode,
Right.
but I went through, reading, dig down into history.
Okay, because that's not
at
honestly
that same time,
yeah, go ahead.
And had come to my own conclusions about truth claims that separately from my own mental health journey.
Wow.
And also when I especially kind of revisited it and started learning more about, Stephen Hassan, who
Yeah.
I'm really big fan of.
And he's
But
key to your rebuilding, right?
yeah, I
Kind of
think that kind of,
process?
yeah, more so learning about like undue influence,
Yep.
thought reform tactics, and, recognizing that in my life. So I felt like that was really huge. And that happened more so actually at the beginning of the pandemic when I went to NYU as a travel nurse in the beginning to go take care of the COVID patients in Manhattan. And at that time, everything was shut down. So I had a lot of free time when I wasn't working and had a lot of time to kind of research. And that's how I'd kind of find his freedomofmind.org, I think is his website, and had read his books Combating Cult Mind Control and Freedom of Mind.
Yep.
So I definitely recommend people read those.
Yes. And I'm going to pause you there, and we're going to pick that up, that thread, because I want to go back a second, because what I'm hearing that Gerardo also kind of brought out is that basically this UVU time, it seems like you're deconstructing a lot. You're having like a lot of towers go down, meaning like, right?
All at the same
You
time.
have kind of faith going down.
Right.
You have identity tower going down and who you are. You have relationship tower that you're trying to rebuild and renegotiate. Like it feels like you are reconstructing from the ground up in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
Effortful.
I felt like in every area of my life, almost from what I had known, I felt like I had to reconstruct, like we had talked about, my own, ethics and morality and what goals and what kind of person did I want to be, in a sense of also what do I believe now?
Yeah.
After going through a faith crisis and transition.
Yeah. And how was just to revisit the safety thing, because I think it feels like so much of your life you did feel unsafe, even with people who you on some level should have been able to trust. So was recreating safety for yourself in yourself part of that? Like, how do I feel safe in my body for myself? How do I was that a key part in relationship, it sounds like, to the therapist, but also in relationship to yourself?
Yeah. To find a sense of safety. I think that as an adult, I've moved forward where if I felt like people, were going to be harmful to me or toxic, I don't have to be around them anymore
Yeah.
because I'm not in a high demand group where you're
That's
forced to
right.
be around them.
Exactly.
And I'm going to make authentic relationships with who I'm drawn to and who speaks to me spiritually.
That's right. Because now you do control your environment
I do.
much
Yeah.
more. I love that. I love that. Okay. So can I go back real quick to your mom?
Yeah.
As well. So can you tell me for that particular tower of just, it feels like this is existential and it's highly, highly personal, right? When you lose someone that you love. So what was that experience like for you when you don't have the belief, when you don't have the answers, right? That can feel so reassuring. So what was it like for you to watch someone you love leave without answers? What did that feel like? Because for many people, this is one of their biggest fears, like coming out of, that's why we give it its own category for a potential thriving, is for some people, they're like, I just don't want to, I really worry for when I lose my mom or when I lose my dad, right? And so just, how did not having the answers, how did that, do you think, change your experience with losing someone you love?
This is really difficult for me to talk about.
You don't have to answer too.
No,
With regard to this, you can always
I
pass.
think for me, seeing her pass away, she passed away in her home. And I want to say that I was focused on respecting her beliefs. And I even had sang a couple of hymns to her that she liked. And I don't think I wanted to focus on that so much at that time.
Yeah.
And for me, I knew that everything was going to be okay. Even with my own belief system, I felt at peace with her passing. It was really hard to lose her. She was only 54 and all of us were really young. I'm the oldest. I'm only 30 now. So we lost her really young and that was really hard. But yeah, no, I felt at peace and I don't feel like my beliefs differing affected
How you showed up.
Right.
I love how you showed up. Because what I hear is you kind of showed up in her language and it was about her.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And people of all beliefs, need to be respected. So,
yeah.
And we had a really supportive and amazing funeral for her with the LDS community. They were amazing. And yeah, but my beliefs differ and I don't know to say if life goes on after this, but I know that I connect to her spiritually every day in the energy and what she taught me and how I want to be. She really was a loving, kind person. And I think she really represented Christ-like values. So,
yeah, beautiful.
Were you ever able to get from her? I guess when you came out to her at first, she was disappointed. Is that what you said? Were you ever able to get I know that she was able to see you with your partner, but did she ever try to communicate to you in some way, like full unconditional love and acceptance, or was she not able to offer that? And regardless, did you feel closure in that regard of kind of full acceptance and unconditional love from her?
I think that closure, I still would want to ask her those questions about the time of me coming out if she was still here. Those are things I did not bring up with her, but I feel like that closure was met when Trevor came to visit and when we went to say goodbye, we were flying back to Utah from California, and she gave, both of us a hug and she said, we love you. You're always welcome here. And I think that was I got my closure.
Yeah, you got that.
So.
How would you say now you connect with your mom, if you do, or that you kind of feel close to her being gone? Are there ways that you remember her?
Oh, absolutely. All the time when I'm like out, usually when I'm by myself, whether it's at the gym or I'm like grocery shopping or driving in the car, I have happy moments with her and I just can feel her presence. And I know that she'd be proud of me. I think that she'd be proud of me, telling my story and speaking up for marginalized communities and working to make a difference
Yeah.
and to save lives. That's ultimately, why I chose this field, is to really help people with their mental health and save lives. So.
Yeah. After she actually passed, what was the grief like for you once I feel like oftentimes in moments where
That's my best friend, by the way. I just commented. Sorry.
Seth?
Yeah.
Ooh, should we highlight Seth?
Yeah.
Seth
I
Trader.
love you, Seth. Yeah.
Aw,
I see you
thanks
on
for
the
being
side
here,
commenting
Seth.
there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. He was great. He was
He-
one of the young men that grew up with me, and he's stayed in touch with me.
Seth wrote, "Love Jake's mom. She is such a wonderful person, always so kind and charitable." So thanks
Yeah.
for joining us, Seth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like did you feel like oftentimes around a death, right? There's this mobilizing where you come together. Ideally, this is in ideal circumstances, right? And you show up and then the person passes. And then oftentimes grief can kind of hit, usually after the funeral and all the doing subsides. And did you have sort of moments of deep grief? And if so, how did you process the loss of her here in sort of this?
I think I had delayed grief, actually. I think during the time I was really at peace. And then kind of getting to that time again when I was a nurse in Manhattan, I had a lot of time to think. Trevor wasn't
Yeah.
even with me at that time. And I kind of went through, I feel like, delayed grief
Yeah.
of missing her at that point in time, because it was so quiet when I was by myself in the hotel room and missing her. So
That's totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, having the space and the time,
Right.
and you're in a place of just being, because we can do our way, I think, out
Right.
of for a time, and it can help us kind of avoid
Exactly.
some of
Yeah.
those emotions.
And it,
Yeah.
I'll go on it. A little bit of our story. We are working on my family dynamics with my dad and my stepmom. He had got married really quickly after the funeral. He had started dating a week after the funeral and had been married within about 6 months' time to one of her best friends growing up. And so it's been really hard on our family to kind of
Mm,
navigate. I always say, adults are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to make their decisions. And that's kind of how I felt about my dad getting married so quickly. And I've supported them in the
mm,
same respect that I, want them to respect my marriage and my life and have that given back to me. But it's been difficult for our family to come together again to how it was before my mom passing.
right. Right. Rebuilding there too, it sounds like.
Right. And we
Okay.
still are. Yeah. My sister is still not on speaking terms with my dad right now. And we're working on it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is still in the present. So, and
Yeah.
I hope that our
Okay.
family can come together again.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. So what if we go into rebuilding now a little bit, and we can, if you want to touch more on family, we can. I'm curious, just as you are now, so kind of going back to sort of UVU through now, right?
Mhm.
It seems like you were starting to say you gained a lot of tools during that time,
I did.
coping skills
Yeah.
that you started working out. Would you mind just sharing some of the rebuilding blocks that really helped you during that time slowly rebuild yourself and a life that actually you felt safe in and that you wanted to live?
Correct. I think taking, what you learned from therapy and applying it to your life of making goals in your interpersonal relationships was huge for me. What kind of people did I want to surround myself with? What kind of person did I want to become? All these are huge in rebuilding, and being able to also take, if you need, I kind of say this, if you need to use medication, that's also something that I advocate for.
Mhm.
There's a time and a place where I needed to use medication, needed a medical
Absolutely.
provider at that time. They work, therapy and meds work in different ways, from like a top down and bottom up approach. And sometimes you need both. And that was huge in me, just being able to recognize where I'm at mentally and if I need to
Mhm.
seek help again in part of rebuilding. So hoping that
Got it.
answers your question.
Yeah, and do you mind also talking about some of the, so I'm hearing kind of medication as well as good sound therapy,
Right.
right? And then talk, if you don't mind, talking about habits, some habits that emerged there in coping, because it sounds like your fitness was kind of part of that.
Fitness was huge. And also spending time to meditate and be mindful every day. taking time to yourself.
Do
I
you have
think
an
that's
app?
huge.
Did you use an app or?
I did not use an app. No, I just
You sit in
yeah,
quiet.
I sit in quiet. Yeah, that's for me. Or I listen to music that's like more soft. That's what I prefer.
Did you
So
read on meditation so you could kind of learn about how to develop a practice like Eckhart Tolle or Sam Harris or any of that kind of stuff?
I didn't read in any of that, but I just used what
Oh,
my therapist had taught me.
oh,
So
cool.
we used a lot of breathing techniques for me as well. So
Breathing.
yeah.
Breathing can be huge.
hmm
Okay, so I'm hearing kind of meditation, daily meditation
Right.
emerged for habits, and then some breathing, and then being active. Is that right? So is that where
Right.
it
Right.
did lifting weights and stuff?
I think that yeah. Oh yeah. I think that, working out with cardio and even, a certain amount of weightlifting could help you for sure
Right.
in your mental and physical health. So
Right. Okay.
weight bearing activities. Yeah.
How did you deal with and heal from the internalized, well, we call it internalized homonegativity or internalized
Yeah.
homophobia. So you go 20, 25 years kind of learning to hate yourself,
Mhm.
learning to deny yourself, learning that your who you are inside is bad. And that doesn't just like wash off in 12 days
That's
and
right.
and getting a therapist.
No.
So how do you like it's okay who I am. It's okay to date other men. It's
It's like
okay to fall in
rewriting.
love. It's okay
That's
to even be
that's
sexually
inten-
active or
that takes a
whatever.
while. That takes several years. To become
Yeah.
comfortable in yourself, to be able to say, I'm gonna surround myself with people that I feel safe with. And I can be okay and feel comfortable in my own shoes. That I could be quirky and awkward, a little bit effeminate, and be okay with that. And if people don't like you or if they say negative things, you just brush it off and just don't care. So
Yeah.
Because the Mormon brain, you make all these associations. It's like if you have attraction to men, it's bad. If you were to touch a man, it's bad. If you have certain thoughts, it's bad. And so as I imagine, as you're starting to maybe accept who you are or talk differently or maybe even date, you would have these feelings or thoughts come into your brain that you would have been taught to associate with the Holy Ghost or the adversary. And then in all this conditioning, how do you move through and still make the behavioral changes when your brain or even your emotions are telling you, don't do that. That's evil. That's bad. You
Mhm.
were taught not to do that. How do you silence those negative feelings and the negative voices in your head as you're
Uh-huh.
changing? Does that make sense?
it does. Yeah. I think that's difficult for a lot of young
Uh-huh.
men to do, and especially for me. I think it's, when those thoughts come in, it's telling yourself that's not true. You are a good person. You're a kind person. You care about other people, and you can live happy, and you could date others. You could respect others and be a good person being gay moving forward. So,
I love that.
Gerardo.
Yeah. So, um, I, th- I, I know this is not about me. It's not my story, but at least for me, what helped me honestly was going through a faith crisis, and like once I decided that it was not true for myself, like it was so much easier to just not care about what I had been taught. I mean, those things still show up, and internally and maybe on your subconscious, and that's something that you have to still fight for a while. But I see, I could see myself struggling a lot more when I was still believing in the church and trying to make the church work and believing the doctrine, but at the same time trying to be authentic. That's when I think I struggled the most with internalized homophobia. Once I stopped believing, it was a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I love the way you describe it too, because I do feel like on some level, it's almost like you have programming that you're rewriting over. Like the programming was never you and it was never true, but it still pumps through because it was planted during like your, developmental years. So it's sort of like it sounds like you have practices where you're aware and you're rewriting and rewiring your brain.
Exactly. Yeah.
around like a default setting or something that
Right.
comes up.
I think John says when he comments, says he has his Mormon brain on, and
That's
you know,
right.
that you spend so much time in this culture that you can never really shut that off. That's always going to be a piece of you and a part of you.
Hmm.
But to reprogram and to accept yourself is really difficult, and that's what a lot of young adults that have a faith crises, existential crises, have to overcome. So,
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, if we were going to continue with rebuilding, were there some hard parts about rebuilding? So, during this time, as you're like, rebuilding relationships, rebuilding your identity, rebuilding even your sense of self and what you're worthy of, that you're worthy of good love, that you're worthy of like happiness and joy. Were there things that were difficult about that process, barriers or things that you found were particularly sticky to work through? And if so, what were they?
in like rebuilding my person to who I am today,
Yeah.
um, I honestly don't think that after my crises and moving here, going through that, I had such a hard time with that. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
I felt like that kind of came naturally for me. I kind of advocated for myself.
Yes.
Maybe that's just me and I'm different that way, but I felt like I honestly didn't have too much difficult of a time rebuilding and finding friends and dating
Yeah.
and trying to maintain a healthy relationship with my parents and friends previously, and becoming a sense of who I want to become. I don't think that I had too much difficulty with
Yeah.
that, to be honest with you.
What about doing it in Utah?
Utah's different. It's even being raised in California. You know, Utah's great. You could find you can always find your people in Utah. There are all sorts of people here. Tons of people are moving into Utah with differing beliefs, and that's great. It's getting to be a little bit more of a melting pot of beliefs and cultural backgrounds than it maybe has been in the past.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Salt Lake City, right? Salt Lake City is a little bit of a,
right, yeah, and
it's a small
I had
pond,
transferred
but
over to University of Utah as well. So I felt like I was able to be surrounded by similar to California, people of all sorts of belief systems.
Mm.
growing up.
nice,
So,
nice. So kind of what I'm hearing is like a new community there
right.
for you with a bit. Okay, how about on the flip side? And I was wondering if honestly, the difficult side was, I wonder, because you'd suffered so long and in such
It's
deep
kind of
ways.
interesting in my case where I feel like I was struggling so much in orthodoxy, and then once I took time to myself, time to be free from that, and to actually seek out evidence-based therapy, that I was able to kind of move pretty quickly. I felt like, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like 8 years have gone by quick,
Yes.
but I feel like I'm able to grow a lot faster from leaving orthodoxy. So,
Exactly.
because I was so confined.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, what about on the other hand, like joys or like just in that rebuilding moments that stand out to you as being pivotal to you or meaningful to you in that rebuilding process of your life, or it could be meeting your husband or whatever,
Yes.
just whatever
Coming
sticks
to-
out as sort of like a joy in that process.
Coming to terms with who I am, and also at that same time finding out what I wanted to do professionally was
Yeah.
huge for me, and I absolutely love what I do. I love the medical field, and I love giving back to people in the mental health community. And then meeting my husband, he is my everything. And when I met him, it was kind of weird. We pretty quickly we knew that we were the ones for each other. So
Yeah.
so we've had a lot of joy, a lot of good times.
Yeah. Do you find okay, couple follow-ups. Can I follow up on it a little bit? Okay. So with regard to it feels like you found meaning and purpose in your job. Would you say that? Am I infusing that? But it feels like you feel really, really powerfully about it.
I do. Yeah. I do feel like I found meaning and purpose in my job and giving back. But I'm a professional. I come in with being neutral, no
Yep.
biases. I keep those boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
These kind of things that we're talking about do not discuss
Yep.
at all. We do not go into any of that with patients, and it is all about the patient and helping them in their moments of crises. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And I would imagine your experience, having experienced the other side of that,
Right.
would so make you, I don't know, you have extra care
Yeah.
around those ethical kind of things and wanting to care for the patient in that way.
Right. And I know
Yeah.
what good care looks like. I've
Mhm.
received it, and
Mhm.
I hope I can give that back
Yeah.
in the future. So,
And just touching on that rebuilding part, did you always feel drawn to the medical field, or was that something that you had your own journey with and seeking and searching out what you wanted to do?
I was always a bit of a nerdy kid. I was always into biology. So I was actually like biology, zoology before deciding that I wanted to go into nursing. So I kind of thought for a while I wanted to do like vet school or med school. So I feel like while I loved science,
Mhm.
I didn't life sciences particularly. I didn't know exactly what my life was going to look like with that, what I was going to decide to do. And so, you know, working as a mental health technician with these populations, I got exposed to nurses and who were kind of mentors to me and
Mm.
got me really interested in that field. I was able to learn about psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners that way. And that's how I was drawn to that field. So,
Got it. Mentors
yes.
are
Yeah.
so huge, aren't they?
Because that's kind of talking about nursing, that's not a field you really think about as a
Yeah.
male growing up. That's, there's their own stereotypes about that. And that's something I really considered, but I've found my love in it, and I'm where I need to be. Yeah.
Mm. Brilliant. And with your husband a little bit, do you mind sharing a little bit about how you met your husband and at what time in your life you met him?
Yeah, this was about 5 years ago. So I was still in nursing prerequisite courses.
Mhm.
I was already a senior in biology at that time and had swapped to want to do nursing.
Mhm.
Um, And so I was extremely busy at that time. And he had actually surprisingly added me on Facebook.
Mm.
And I usually don't add people I don't know, but I saw mutual friends. I was like, okay, he's a handsome guy. And he started chatting with me on Facebook. And he actually had asked me out to a date. And at that point in my life, like, I think that I was so focused on my career that I was not really focused on having a relationship.
Mhm.
I just wanted to continue my education and get that done.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird how the relationship was like kind of fell into my lap that way. It was not something I was seeking, but I'm so glad that it happened. And um, we met and we became each other's best friends. And he supported me through my whole nursing schooling and grad school. So he's been amazing. And he us saying my sister and him kind of, I feel like, inspired me to come on this podcast because um I love my sister. She had just put herself out to be Miss Huntington Beach, and she was in the finals for Miss California this past fall. And my husband is going to be competing in bodybuilding next month for his first show. So, seeing both my husband and my sister put themselves out there to be vulnerable in a different way,
Mm.
inspired me to kind of come forward in something that I'm passionate about. So,
Yeah, feeling
and
inspired by.
yeah,
I can feel it
share
that
my
you feel
story. So,
inspired by
and it's
them.
vulnerable to be here,
It sure is. Well, look at you.
Right. I'm in the hot seat. It's been hard. I
That's
don't know what
right.
comments are coming my way, but
Do you have any comments you want to share? Are there any comments coming in that you want to share at the moment?
I haven't. I was paying attention to
Anyone?
his story,
Anyone?
so I
That's
was
okay.
not reading them.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pick up around resources then. So we've talked a little bit about rebuilding, right? And if we were going to go for kind of some resources that have been important to you in your rebuilding process, particularly, let's say, around mental health, and if there were any that came kind of forward during grief and loss, or even in general,
just in general,
or
yeah,
even
I
in
think
general that you think are healthy
yeah,
for you.
even if you aren't seeing a therapist right now, or you have to be on a wait list, something like, get a self therapy manual. Like Mind Over Mood is a good one that I like. That's CBT.
Okay. Mind over mood.
Right. And I think utilizing, we have crisis lines here if that's something that you need someone to talk to immediately. We have peer support specialists here in Utah. We have a good setup for mental health here.
What's a crisis line that you're like by name?
The University of Utah's crisis line is one that people could search up, and that's the one that I recommend in the area or here in Utah. But there's a suicide hotline for people struggling with those kind of things. And then being able, it's pretty easy to just search up, YouTube videos and techniques of mindfulness and meditations.
Right.
And that's what I would say go to first if you cannot
Meditation
get
practice.
in right away with someone. Yeah.
In your experience,
yeah.
what is it that you feel like meditation has brought you?
Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. It helps me, to ground myself. If I get stressed out really easily. So it's really helps me to kind of just calm down, keep my anxiety down.
Yeah. And your practice looks like, do you sit in the morning or what is your practice right now?
Well, my schedule's all over the place. So
Oh, that's
I'm
right.
actually more of an evening person. I've been more nocturnal. So I feel like I take my alone time at night to kind of be in my thoughts and think and meditate. And that's my time.
Beautiful. Yeah. I love that because I love the idea of picking a time that actually works for you as opposed to like some prescribed or, what you hear.
Right.
Finding the right time for your life.
Yep. And having to be a nurse and working graves for so long, it kind of gives me a bit of that shift work disorder. So I'm struggle in the daytimes actually more so with my thoughts and stuff. So yeah, more for me, nighttime.
Okay. So I hear kind of books, the mind over mood. I hear good therapy. I hear meditation.
Lots of podcasts.
Lots of podcasts. What are a couple of your favorites that have been important for you?
Well, I think that, Mormon Stories, you guys cover a lot of mental health on here. This is not the first episode on mental health. And I just look up a lot of meditations online. So I don't have it. I love Stephen Hassan's Influence Continuum podcast. But these are all separate things talking about undue influence and kind of deconstruction, like what was going on with me at those times. But I don't have a particular. Yeah, that's my favorite.
But so to go back to it's Steve Hassan, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like what does he bring for you? What is the value that you feel like he has been able to, is it kind of understanding yourself, understanding your brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think understanding a lot of what I was going through is prevalent in his work.
Yeah.
So,
and systems.
that's why he means a lot to me. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Any other resources that you feel like we haven't mentioned yet with rebuilding? Would you put your health and exercise in there?
I would. Yeah. Definitely try to work out 3 to 4 times a week if you can. Any sort of movement is great.
Yeah. So. Okay.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, wow, he's basically telling us things that we probably hear a lot, which is like, be who you are, surround yourself with good friends, exercise regularly, get a good therapist, eat right, pursue your dreams. But I think there's a lot of people that have a hard time doing all those things. What are the secrets for you making this, because it's a cliche, you go to a therapist, you're depressed, they say work out, get good sleep and eat right. But then you're depressed and you don't want to do any of those things. So do you have any tips on how to work on that self-improvement that will lead to improved mental health when you don't feel like it? You know what I mean? When you feel stuck. I don't even know if you experienced depression and if that was something you had to battle, or if all that lifted once you just became your authentic self. And maybe that's been your secret,
I think that there's, what I would say is you need to write it down, make some goals of what you're going to do for the week, take it week by week. And, we talk about this, action. So take action before, and hopefully the benefits will come after. So and it's difficult for a lot of people that are struggling with depression to do that. But even, when it comes to health, even if it's just like one day this week, I'm going to get out and be active.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to, cook at home, eat healthy. Right. I'm going to listen to a meditation. Start small. Don't overwhelm yourself.
Yeah, I
So-
love that. I love that too, that it breaks down to sort of practices and habits, really, because I think there's this sense of like, I don't know, with aspirational thought that you should just arrive somewhere. But I think really we are a result oftentimes of the things we prioritize and the habits that kind of come to the surface. But I love too that it's just small. Like sometimes health looks like a glass of water. Like really, sometimes it looks like just sort of getting up and moving and getting up out of a seat for a little bit. Or, yeah, I love that. Great.
I also just want to note, going back to Stephen Hassan, and it sounds like you may have appreciated the Luna Lindsay Corbden.
I did. She's in my notes.
Yeah, Recovering Agency book.
They-
And, you don't
have that.
think about, and by the way, we're always going to want to be sensitive on Mormon stories to, what are you saying?
I was saying they.
Luna
Yeah.
Lindsay Corbden,
Yeah.
they. Thank you, Margi. We're always going to want to be sensitive on Mormon Stories podcast about not referring to the Mormon Church as a cult, and to being careful how we talk about high demand religions. And having said that, I think when people are thinking about their mental health, especially after faith transition, they don't think about awareness around high demand religions, undue influence, kind of awareness around that as being its own intervention. But like for me, watching documentaries about cults or high demand religions really helped me see it in other organizations, understand conditioning, understand undue influence, so that I could kind of deprogram and detach myself and rebuild. And that's actually a really important intervention. It's why when I've done kind of coaching with people in faith crisis, I'm like, watch Pleasantville, watch The Truman Show, watch The Matrix, watch The Village. There are all these Tangled. There are all these movies or documentaries. Watch Holy Hell or The Vow or Wild Wild Country. So whether it's cult documentaries or Going Clear, or whether it's these movies that seem to be about being raised in an artificial reality, then having this awakening and then having to rebuild, those become their own interventions of sorts. And so I'm just saying, you keep mentioning Stephen Hassan, you keep mentioning education and awareness around undue influence. And I'm going to say that's sounding like one of the major tools for your improvement of mental health. And I've never really thought of it that way before. You think about eating right, exercising, meditation as important things for mental health, but like high demand religion / undue influence awareness seems like it was a big one for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was probably one of the most pivotal to understanding what I had just gone through growing up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would
And
agree to
also, because these techniques that are used in high demand religions or cults can be used in the workplace sometimes, and relationships. It's not. There's a new documentary in Netflix called Bad Vegan, where this lady has her partner is employing all of these techniques, to have her like do mind control on her and stuff. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an organization. It can later play out. And by us having already gone through it, if we're not really informed, we can, fall back into
So true.
Yeah. So being informed about all that stuff, I think it's really important to avoid it. Even us, and when you raise kids and stuff like that, you don't want to be controlling, and you want to be careful how that the techniques you're using to parent are mindful. And
Yeah. I think being able to identify systems too,
Mhm.
healthy systems versus not. And I think whether we like it or not, we're all taking part in systems, whether it's the medical system, educational system, political systems, and so I think just because life does require us as part of being alive, that it's super important that we become very aware of what a healthy system, how it operates, what it asks of you, what it looks like, and then how we want to behave and act or protect ourselves and advocate for ourselves, right?
Right.
And for our kids too. But yeah.
Yeah, I think and a lot of it looks at just relationships, not even systems, focusing
Yeah.
on what abusive relationships look like, and
Family systems.
family dynamics, family systems. And I think it's great to learn about these things because, yes, you could be the kind of medical professional, you could be the type of parent, you could be the type of leader that you want to be in your respective system, and advocate for changes when you see that things might be undue influence or unhealthy.
I love that. I love that. I love that, especially with personal relationships too.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'll add is it seems like high demand religions, they're not optimized for helping you discover who you are. They're kind of optimized for shaping you into the type of human that would be of good service to the organization.
Exactly.
And so once you've untangled from a high demand religion, it's all about, who am I? How do I listen to my own voice again? How do I figure out what drives me and what excites me? And then how do I become self-centered in a good way? Because then if I'm healthy and aware and in tune with who I am and learn to listen to my own voice, not the voice my religion programmed me to listen to, then I can not only be my best self, but then I can show up as a healthy self for other people.
Yeah, I love that. I would agree.
Is that true for you?
I think it would be true for me.
Yeah.
So what is your life like now? If we were going to get a kind of a snapshot of, so this is like the thriving part, is just today versus kind of where you've been. So thinking about mental health, and because you touched on community a bit, we can come back round to because you brought it up, the importance of, chosen family, or also family where you feel like it feels healthier. So what does it look like now? What is your, how does it differ from before, your life now, and does it feel healthier?
Life is a complete 180 from where it was before. It's very happy, very healthy. We keep ourselves busy with positive things, things that we feel like are progressing ourselves towards who we want to be. And we're talking a lot about my husband and I about raising kids and what kind of parents do we want to be. And right now we're still finding ourselves a bit. And right now I'm so busy in school and caught up in stuff that I'm passionate about to get to a place where I can, give back doing what I want to do. So I think life has been pretty great, I think, overall. And I have people around me that love and support me. We're pretty close with Trevor's family, and they've been amazing to us. And then also building, those relationships that I had growing up with friends that I'd grown up with as well, keeping in contact with them and really trying to build more authentic relationships with them has been a challenge. But I think that it's been pretty positive overall since I've been able to come out and get married and be who I am, because I'm able to set boundaries and I'm able to be myself and feel comfortable in my own shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and would you say kind of in the present moment that your mental health is something that you have to tend to? It's something that is like a continual, or
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. That's something that I know that I am going to struggle with the rest of my life, and coming to terms with that as well.
Yeah.
Knowing that I do have, some depression, anxiety that will always, be there, but I have the skills to be able to be happy. And just because you might struggle with those things doesn't mean that you can't be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. So beautiful. Are there any other, oh yeah.
So I remember when the fight for marriage equality was going on, there's like, well, will LGBT people even really want to get married? Or like, does it really matter? Is there really a difference between legal marriage versus civil unions versus just choosing to live together? And I remember in my research that there actually were meaningful differences in quality of life between just sexually active and dating versus like in a non-legal committed relationship. But the highest outcomes in our research were legal marriage. And I'm just wondering, now that, same-sex marriage was legalized, and now that you're in a legal marriage, whether the ability to be legally married, if you associate that for you with positive outcomes, and if so, why?
I would think so. And I've been lucky enough that was passed for the time that I found my husband. Um, and it's a sense of being equal to those around us, and that we have families too, we have marriages, and they can still have happy and similar outcomes to heterosexual marriages. So, and I think it's huge in us feeling fulfilled and happy in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Though, don't you think there is an irony in always feeling like there's the comparison is with heterosexual marriages, whereas so many heterosexual marriages are unhappy that they're the standard, where you're like, wait, why are we comparing to you? Because I'm pretty sure you're having a very hard time of it. But anyway, the irony, right?
It is. I know.
Yeah. Are there any final things that you would want to say that maybe I didn't ask you, or about your journey, or about things that you think they could also be tips for people that are struggling in these particular domains, particularly like right now? Is there anything, or are you feeling quite?
I feel like coming here to focus on more of my Thrive story and just sharing my personal story, becoming vulnerable. I just wanted to, kind of had a few populations I wanted to focus on. Hopefully, from getting this message, I hope that individuals who are struggling with mental health can have some hope, and can be given resources, and know that you can live healthy and thrive outside of religious orthodoxy. That's a huge thing for me coming on, and I hope that can help someone. So,
Yeah.
as well as parents and leaders, I want them to learn about undue influence and these thought reform tactics and unhealthy systems, so that they can create safer spaces for all of our youth, but especially our LGBTQ youth, who have higher rates of mental illness, for sure.
Yeah.
Issues with that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, in closing, can I just say something that I think has been so lovely to witness in you?
Absolutely.
It's just like following your story, and from the beginning, and feeling like safety was such an issue early on, and also this feeling that you kind of shared of just feeling like broken or innately wrong, that I have just loved witnessing how you have come to value it, to restore those things. It's like now you have a life where you have safety. You've created one for yourself where you can feel safe, and you're also trying to make the world safer for other people. It's not just for you, but you're also trying to advocate and create spaces for other people. I love that full circle there. And I love that you have good love, that you feel seen in that part of you that you were programmed or so wrongly, it's just, I can't think of, it's just such a horrible thing to do to human beings, that you have created on the other side all this love in your life. It is a beautiful thing to witness. So I really appreciate you being willing to come and kind of lay yourself bare here,
Yeah.
not knowing me particularly well. It's been incredible to witness.
I really appreciate that, and that touched my heart. So getting emotional
Yeah.
hearing that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You've been great welcoming me here, and I really appreciate you meeting with me today.
Oh, beautiful. Any other comments before we sign off?
Gerardo?
No, it's been great. Yeah, just highlighting queer stories of those of us who have been able to thrive, in different ways. And yeah, it's just great. Thanks, Jake, for coming.
And if there are any LGBT youth or young adults or older
Mhm.
adults, or just people, humans, because it's kind of a universal story. I learned from everyone, and we all have things to learn from everyone. If you were to kind of give any final tips to somebody going through their transition, gay or straight, what would be your final tips of wisdom for someone who feels like they're stuck, or maybe they're not feeling a lot of hope, and they're wondering if it gets better? Any final words of encouragement you want to offer?
I would say, like, kind of with the advice I had given earlier, take it small, but take action. Ultimately, we're all in charge of our own mental well-being, and we need to advocate for ourselves. I think that's the most important advice that I can give anyone.
Love it. Yep. So thank you, Jake. Thanks, Gerardo and
Yeah.
John. And thank you for being here for another episode of Thrive Stories. And until next time, keep thriving.
And Margi, if people want to sign up for a Thrive Story, anything you want to offer or add about that?
I don't think so. Just, I feel like we've made it pretty straightforward. You can click on the link that gets to me. And then from there, we are prioritizing in-person interviews for now. We may add streaming interviews later, but so just kind of knowing that. And then from there, I am picking topics. We only have 2 a month. And so I usually get back with some type of submission form or interview form if all is in line.
So you can go to the description in the blog or on YouTube or on Facebook and click on the link in the show notes that will take you to the application form.
That's right. We would love to have you on. So happy thriving, everyone.
All right.